Hotep Scholars. I'm Professor Horton, and once again, this is STEM for second grade. We've been talking all about inventors. We took a look at some young inventors your age, and we found out how they used a process called the design process to solve everyday problems in their lives. Well, today we're going to take a closer look at that design process and find out how you can use it to solve problems in your life. In order to learn more about the world around us, we need to be able to describe what we see, feel, taste, hear, or smell. Color and texture are two properties we can use to describe what we see and feel. Now, color is the way objects appear different. They can be brown, red, yellow, or even blue because of the light that the object reflects. Now, texture, on the other hand, is the way that something feels when we touch it with our skin. It can be scratchy, like the bristles of this paintbrush. It can be soft, like the fur on this stuffed animal. It can be smooth. It can even be squishy. Now, what are we describing? Anything that has mass and takes up space is called matter. So let's take a break and think about things that take up space. Because if it takes up space, then it's matter. So what about a bicycle? Does a bicycle take up space? Yes. So it's matter. What about an apple? Is an apple matter? Does an apple take up space? If you said yes, then you're right. Apples are matter. How about water? Is water matter? Does water take up space? Yes. So guess what? It's matter. How about you? Do you take up space? Yes, of course you do. So even you are matter. Now, let's take a look at some things that aren't matter. So we said that anything that takes up space is matter. Well, what if it doesn't take up space? What about light? Does light take up space? Of course not. So guess what? Light is not matter. How about cold? Does cold take up space? No, cold does not take up space. So cold is not matter. Let's think about, how about a shadow? Does a shadow take up space? No, shadows do not take up space. So shadows are not matter. So in this activity, you're going to describe the color and texture on one example of matter. All right, let's take a look at this monster truck. What colors can we identify on this monster truck? Well, if you look closely, you can see orange on the body of the truck. You can see black on the tires. You can see silver or gray on the bumper. You can see red coming out of the pipes on the side. You can see gray smoke coming out of it. All of these colors are used to describe this object that takes up space and is called matter. So we said that another way to describe objects is by describing the texture. So let's take a look at some of the textures that this object has. So let's start with the wheels, for example. What do you think the wheels might look like? What might these tires feel like if we were to rub them on our hands? Well, to me, it looks like they would feel bumpy, just like the toy car, the toy monster truck that I showed you in the beginning. But that's a lot different than the body of the truck, for example, which looks really smooth. So let's take a look at how we can redraw this object in our launch log to describe both its color and its texture as properties of this object. We said that the wheels are bumpy, so I'm going to go ahead and start off with the wheels. And one way that artists will illustrate texture is by using pattern. So I'm going to use this rectangle and repeat the same shape to create a bumpy texture. Awesome. And another way that I'll make the texture look bumpy is by adding a lighter color to make it look like the ridges of the tire are actually standing out. This just makes it look like the tire is even more bumpy. So next, I'm going to use another pattern of circles to create the illusion of the bolts on the tire. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you about your challenge for today, which is going to be to find an object in your house and redraw it. And when you draw it, I want you to illustrate both the color and the texture of the object. So when it's time for you to illustrate the texture, remember that artists use patterns, which is anything that repeats. In this case, I repeated rectangles, and then I repeated circles for the bolts. In both cases, it looks as though if you were to touch the tire, it would be bumpy. So when it's your turn to illustrate your object, make sure that when you illustrate the texture, you use pattern. All right, so now we have 2 tires, and it's time to add the body. So for the body, I'm going to go ahead and round up the corners so it looks nice and smooth, because we said that if we touch the body of the monster truck, it would look smooth. Now I'll go ahead and add the top, put some windows, and even the spare tire. So next, let's make the body of the truck look even more shiny. Now, artists not only use color and pattern to make an object texture, but we also use light. So here, I'm going to go ahead and add a reflection to make the side of the truck look very shiny and smooth. Awesome. I'm going to add one more texture just to make it look, just to add contrast and make the side of the truck look a little more bumpy. And now we're ready to go. All right, scholars, your challenge for today is to look around your house, find one object, carefully analyze it, and document the colors and the textures that you can identify. Next, I want you to take your time to carefully draw this object while illustrating the color by coloring it in, and the texture by using patterns to recreate the patterns that you observe. That's all I have for you today, and as always, stay safe and I'll see you next time.